The stars looked different through alien eyes. Commander Thexaval stood on the bridge of his warship, studying the data streams that flowed across the holographic displays. His forearms moved with practiced precision as he sorted through the intelligence reports from the outer rim of what the locals called the Milky Way galaxy. "Another primitive species, Commander," his aide Vexitar announced, his voice carrying the typical boredom of someone who had seen this scenario play out dozens of times. "They call themselves humans, carbon-based, bipedal, and barely capable of reaching their own moon with any consistency." Thexval's compound eyes focused on the intercepted transmissions. The aliens, humans, were indeed pathetically backward. Their fastest ships used crude chemical rockets that could barely push them between the rocky planets of their home system. They had managed to establish small outposts on 2 nearby worlds, but even these achievements seemed to strain their limited technology. "Look at this," Vextar continued, manipulating the display to show human communication networks. "They still use electromagnetic radiation for most of their data transmission. No quantum entanglement, no subspace relays. They probably don't even know that faster-than-light travel is possible." The Vex Empire had encountered thousands of species during their expansion across the galaxy. Most fell into predictable categories. The truly advanced civilizations either joined the Empire willingly or were destroyed after brief but spectacular wars. The primitive ones were simply swept aside, their worlds claimed and their populations relocated to serve as labor forces on more useful planets. These humans appeared to fit perfectly into the second category. "What about their military capabilities?" Thexaval asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Laughable," Vextar replied. "They have no space-based weapons of any significance. Their most powerful military vessels are designed for atmospheric flight and couldn't survive a real space battle for more than a few seconds. They seem to spend most of their time fighting each other over trivial resources." Thexval nodded, satisfied. The Empire needed the Kepler system for its rich mineral deposits and strategic location along a major hyperspace route. Intelligence reports indicated that the humans had launched some kind of colony ship toward one of the planets in that system, but a single primitive vessel posed no real threat to Imperial interests. "Dispatch the 7th Patrol Squadron," Thexval ordered. 5 ships should be more than sufficient to deal with any human presence in the Kepler system. If their colony ship has already arrived, destroy it. We cannot allow primitive species to establish footholds in strategically important systems. "Understood, Commander. Captain Vexthor has been briefed and is ready to depart within the hour." As the patrol squadron prepared for hyperspace jump, neither Thexval nor any of his subordinates bothered to conduct a detailed analysis of human technology. Why would they? The pattern had been established over centuries of conquest. Primitive species remained primitive until they were conquered or destroyed. The idea that a civilization using chemical rockets might possess hidden capabilities simply never occurred to them. Meanwhile, 847 light-years away, the colony ship New Dawn continued its long journey toward Kepler 442b. Captain Minho stood in the ship's observation deck, watching the stars wheel slowly past as the massive vessel rotated to provide artificial gravity for its 50,000 passengers. At this distance from Earth, even the sun was just another point of light among billions. "Still thinking about home?" asked Hannah as she joined him at the viewing port. As the ship's chief engineer, she spent most of her time deep in the mechanical sections, ensuring that the fusion drives and life support systems continued to function properly. The few times she made it up to the observation areas, she always seemed slightly amazed by the view. "Sometimes," Minho admitted. "Mostly I think about what we're going to find when we get there. The automated probe said Kepler 442b has everything. We need water, breathable atmosphere, reasonable gravity. But probes can miss things." Hannah smiled. "That's why they sent an engineer who likes solving problems. Whatever we find, we'll make it work." The New Dawn represented humanity's most ambitious colonization effort to date. Unlike the small research stations on Mars and Europa, this was intended to be a completely self-sufficient settlement capable of supporting tens of thousands of people indefinitely. The ship carried not just colonists but entire manufacturing facilities, agricultural systems, and enough raw materials to build a small city. More importantly, it carried the accumulated knowledge and experience of a species that had learned to survive in some of the harshest environments imaginable. Every human colony, from the deep-sea research stations in Earth's oceans to the ice mining facilities on Europa, had taught humanity something about adaptation and resourcefulness. "Captain to the bridge," came the announcement over the ship's communication system. "We have an unusual sensor reading." Minho and Hana exchanged glances. After 18 months in deep space, unusual readings were rarely good news. They made their way through the ship's corridors, past hydroponics bays where crops grew under artificial sunlight, and residential sections where families were raising children who had never seen a natural sky. On the bridge, communications officer, Yuna was bent over her console with a puzzled expression. "I've been tracking some strange signals for the past few hours," she reported. "At first I thought it might be background radiation from a pulsar, but the patterns are too regular." Security Chief Taiho looked up from his own station. "Could it be another ship?" "That's what I'm wondering," Yuna replied. "But if it is a ship, it's using technology I don't recognize. The energy signatures are completely different from anything in our databases." Minho felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's environmental systems. "Are you saying we might not be alone out here?" "I'm saying there's something out there that's definitely not natural, and probably not human." Yuna's fingers danced across her controls as she tried to get a clearer reading. "Whatever it is, it's big. It's moving in a controlled fashion and it's headed in our general direction." For several minutes, the bridge crew worked in tense silence. The New Dawn's sensors had been designed primarily for navigation and asteroid detection, not for identifying alien spacecraft. They were pushing the equipment far beyond its intended capabilities. "Got something," Taiho announced. 5 objects, definitely artificial, moving in formation. They're about 6 hours out at their current speed." "Can we tell if they're friendly?" Minho asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Yuna shook her head. "I've been trying to establish communication, but they're not responding to any of our standard protocols. Actually, they don't seem to be trying to communicate at all, they're just coming." Hana moved to one of the auxiliary stations and began calling up the ship's technical specifications. "How fast can we alter course?" she asked. "Not fast enough to avoid them if they really want to intercept us," Minho replied. "The New Dawn wasn't built for evasive maneuvers. We're a colony ship, not a racing yacht. Then we need to prepare for the possibility that they might not be friendly," Taiho said grimly. "I recommend we go to general quarters and prepare the crew for emergency procedures." As the ship's emergency systems came online, and 50,000 colonists received instructions to secure themselves and their belongings, Minho found himself thinking about Earth's history. Humanity had a long and often tragic experience with first contact between different groups of people. Sometimes it led to trade and cultural exchange. Too often, it led to conquest and destruction. The approaching ships showed no signs of slowing down or attempting communication. Their course had been precisely calculated to intercept the New Dawn, and they were sticking to it with mechanical precision. Whatever their intentions, they clearly weren't interested in a friendly chat. "All stations report ready," Taiho announced. "As ready as we can be, anyway." Minho nodded and activated the ship-wide communication system. "This is the captain speaking. We are about to encounter vessels of unknown origin and intent. All colonists should remain in their quarters and follow the emergency procedures we've practiced. If these visitors prove friendly, we'll welcome them properly. If they prove hostile, we'll deal with that too. We've come too far to give up now." The 5 alien ships dropped out of hyperspace with a brilliant flash of exotic radiation that temporarily overloaded the New Dawn sensors. When the displays cleared, the alien vessels were visible as dark shapes silhouetted against the stars, their hulls reflecting no light and their purposes entirely unknown. For a long moment, both groups of ships hung motionless in the vast emptiness of space. Then the alien vessels powered up their weapons, and Captain Vex Thor prepared to carry out his orders to eliminate the primitive human presence in the Kepler system. Neither side yet understood that they were about to make history, though for very different reasons than either of them expected. The New Dawn's crew watched in stunned silence as energy readings spiked across their sensor displays. Whatever weapons the alien ships carried, they were far more powerful than anything in humanity's arsenal. But Minho had not brought 50,000 people across nearly 400 light-years just to surrender at the first sign of trouble. "All hands, prepare for combat," he ordered. The first alien energy blast struck the New Dawn's hull with the force of a small star. The ship shuddered from bow to stern as exotic particles tore through the outer armor plating, sending shockwaves through every corridor and compartment. Emergency lights flickered on throughout the vessel as the main power grid struggled to compensate for the massive energy drain. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 9. Tejo shouted over the noise of alarms and emergency systems. "Sealing. Emergency bulkheads now." Captain Vexthor watched the human ship absorb his opening salvo with growing confusion. His weapons should have cut through the primitive vessel like a plasma torch through paper. Instead, the human ship was still intact, still maneuvering, and somehow still fighting back. "Sir, they're returning fire," his tactical officer reported with obvious disbelief. The New Dawn's response came in the form of mining lasers and asteroid deflection charges, weapons that had never been intended for ship-to-ship combat. But Hana had spent the last 18 months modifying and upgrading every system on the ship, and she had always been creative with her engineering solutions. "Those aren't weapons," Vexthor muttered, as he watched his lead ship's shields flicker under the impact of repurposed industrial equipment. "How are they hurting us with mining tools?" The answer lay in human ingenuity and the specific nature of Vex technology. The aliens had designed their shields to defend against energy weapons, similar to their own. They had never encountered kinetic impactors traveling at significant fractions of light speed, or explosive devices that relied on chemical reactions rather than exotic matter manipulation. "Direct hit on the Vex quill," the tactical officer reported. "They're reporting major hull damage and requesting immediate support." Hana worked frantically in the engineering section, rerouting power from non-essential systems to boost the mining laser's output. Around her, teams of technicians modified asteroid processing equipment into improvised weapons systems. The ship's manufacturing facilities, designed to produce everything the colonists would need on their new world, had been converted into an arms factory. "How are we doing, Hana?" Minho's voice came through the communication system. "Better than expected," she replied, ducking as another alien energy blast sent sparks flying from an overhead conduit. "Their shields don't seem to be calibrated for our kind of weapons. The mining charges are particularly effective. They're designed to crack asteroids, and apparently alien hull plating isn't much tougher." On the bridge, Yuna had managed to establish a communication link with Earth, despite the incredible distance and the ongoing battle. The quantum entanglement transmitter that allowed near-instantaneous communication across interstellar distances was one of humanity's most closely guarded technological secrets, and one that the Vex had completely failed to detect. "Earth Control, this is the New Dawn," she transmitted. "We are under attack by alien vessels of unknown origin. They opened fire without warning or provocation. We are holding our own for now, but we need immediate assistance." The response came, back within minutes, carrying the voice of Admiral Jiho at Terran Defense Command. "New Dawn, this is Admiral Jiho. We copy your distress call. You are authorized to defend yourselves by any means necessary. We are analyzing your sensor data and preparing a response. Hold position and keep fighting." Dr. Sora, Earth's leading expert in theoretical xenobiology, studied the transmitted data with growing excitement and concern. Humanity's first contact with an alien species was happening in the worst possible way, but the information they were gathering was invaluable. "Look at their energy signatures," she told Admiral Jiho. "Their weapons are incredibly powerful, but they're designed for a specific type of warfare. They're not adapted for fighting against kinetic weapons or chemical explosives." "What does that tell us about them?" Jiho asked. "It suggests they've been fighting the same kinds of enemies for a long time," Sora replied. "Species that use energy-based technology similar to their own. They've never encountered anything like human engineering, which might give us an advantage." Back, aboard the New Dawn, the battle had been raging for 6 hours. 2 of the alien ships had been forced to withdraw with severe damage, But the colony ship was also taking a beating. The aliens had adapted to some of humanity's tactics, and their superior technology was beginning to tell. "We can't keep this up much longer," Taiho reported. "We're running low on mining charges and the hull breaches are getting harder to contain." Minho made a decision that would change the course of the battle. "Take us into the asteroid field," he ordered. "If we're going to fight mining equipment, let's fight where mining equipment works best." The New Dawn dove toward a dense cluster of asteroids, using its superior knowledge of asteroid navigation to thread between rocks that would have crushed a less experienced crew. The alien ships followed, but they were designed for open space combat, not for maneuvering in cluttered environments. "Now," Hana announced over the communication system. Throughout the asteroid field, carefully placed charges detonated simultaneously. Mining explosives that had been attached to key asteroids created a cascading chain reaction, turning the entire field into a storm of high-velocity debris. The alien ships, caught in the middle of the chaos, found their shields overwhelmed by thousands of small impacts. "The Vex Mandor is down," came the report from the alien fleet. "Hull breach in the reactor section. They're abandoning ship." Captain Vexthor watched in shock as one of his vessels exploded in a brilliant flash of released energy. The humans had turned the asteroid field itself into a weapon, using techniques that no civilized species had ever employed in warfare. "Sir, we should withdraw," his tactical officer suggested. "These humans are not what our intelligence reports indicated." Vexthor was tempted to agree, but his orders had been clear. The humans were to be eliminated, and their presence in the Kepler system was to be ended permanently. Besides, retreat after losing ships to a primitive species would be a disgrace that would follow him for the rest of his career. "Deploy tracking devices on the largest asteroids," he ordered. "Then we withdraw to a safe distance and call for reinforcements. The Empire needs to know that these humans are more dangerous than we thought." The remaining Vex ships retreated, but not before planting sophisticated surveillance devices throughout the asteroid field. They had learned that the humans were resourceful and dangerous, but they still believed that superior numbers and technology would eventually prevail. Aboard the New Dawn, the crew celebrated their victory with exhausted relief. They had survived humanity's first interstellar battle, but everyone understood that this was just the beginning. "Yuna, get me another link to Earth," Minho ordered. "Tell them we've driven off the immediate threat, but there's something they need to know." The communication that reached Earth an hour later would transform human civilization forever. "Admiral, the aliens mentioned reinforcements before they withdrew. We captured some of their communication protocols, and Dr. Sora's people should analyze them immediately. These weren't explorers or traders, they were military vessels on a mission to eliminate us. And they're not working alone." Admiral Jiho received the message in his command center deep beneath the Swiss Alps. Around him, screens showed the positions of every human ship and station from Mercury to the edge of the solar system. Until today, those assets had been focused on exploration and colonization. Now they would need to be transformed into something else entirely. "General alert to all commands," Jiho ordered. "Priority Alpha. As of this moment, humanity is at war with an unknown alien species. All civilian space assets are hereby placed under military control. Begin immediate conversion of industrial facilities for wartime production." President Kyung addressed the United Nations 6 hours later, her words carried to every human settlement throughout the solar system. "Fellow citizens, today we learned that we are not alone in the universe. We also learned that our new neighbors are not friendly. But we have something they clearly didn't expect. We have each other and we have the will to defend our home." The Vex Empire received Captain Vexthor's report with a mixture of disbelief and growing alarm. No primitive species had ever successfully resisted a Vex patrol squadron. The implications were troubling. "Deploy the Third Conquest Armada, Emperor," Vexgran ordered after reviewing the battle reports. 200 ships should be sufficient to deal with these humans, regardless of their apparent tactical innovations. "We cannot allow word to spread that the Empire has been defeated by primitives." Commander Thexval accepted the assignment with confidence. 200 ships represented more firepower than most star systems could muster. Whatever tricks the humans had used against a single patrol squadron would be irrelevant against a force of that magnitude. But as the Third Conquest Armada prepared for departure, intelligence analysts throughout the Vex Empire worked frantically to understand what had happened in the Kepler system. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that didn't match their apparent technological level, and that contradiction was deeply unsettling to species that had built their entire civilization on the assumption that technological advancement followed predictable patterns. On Earth, similar analysis was taking place with very different conclusions. Doctor, the news of humanity's first contact with hostile aliens spread through Earth's communication networks faster than any information had ever traveled before. Within 6 hours of the New Dawn's battle report, every major government, corporation, and military organization in the solar system had been briefed on the situation. Within 12 hours, the entire human race knew that they were no longer alone in the universe, and that their new neighbors wanted them dead. President Kyung stood before the largest gathering of world leaders in human history, the United Nations. General Assembly had been expanded to include representatives from Mars Colony, Europa Station, and dozens of smaller outposts throughout the solar system. For the first time since humanity had left Earth, they were truly united in purpose. The attack on the New Dawn was not an isolated incident, she announced, her voice carrying to billions of people watching on every inhabited world. Intelligence. Analysis of captured alien communications indicates that we are dealing with a species that has conquered thousands of other civilizations. They view us as nothing more than another primitive obstacle to be eliminated. Admiral Jiho stepped forward to address the assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing an enemy with superior technology and vast military resources. However, they have made one critical error. They have underestimated what humans can accomplish when we work together. The transformation began immediately. Every spacecraft manufacturer in the solar system received emergency contracts to convert their production lines from civilian to military purposes. The massive orbital shipyards that had been building colony ships and cargo haulers started producing warships instead. Mining operations that had been extracting resources for construction projects were redirected to military production. But the real genius of humanity's response lay not in building new weapons, but in converting existing infrastructure into defensive systems. Engineer Dayun, who had designed the terraforming equipment that was slowly transforming Mars into a livable world, found herself reassigned to a new project, turning construction equipment into weapons of war. Look at this, she explained to her team as they examined a standard construction mech. These machines were designed to build habitats in hostile environments. They're tough, versatile, and equipped with tools that can cut through solid rock. With some modifications, they could be incredibly effective in space combat. The construction mechs were just the beginning. Throughout the solar system, human engineers looked at their civilian technology with new eyes. Cargo ships became missile platforms. Mining lasers became ship-killing weapons. Even the mass drivers used to launch materials from Luna to Earth were converted into planetary defense cannons capable of accelerating projectiles to incredible velocities. Dr. Sora's analysis of the captured Vex technology revealed something crucial about their enemies. They're specialists, she reported to Admiral Jiho. Everything they build is optimized for energy-based warfare against other energy-using species. Their shields are designed to deflect particle beams and plasma weapons, but they're vulnerable to kinetic impacts and chemical explosives. So we fight them with rocks and dynamite? Jiho asked. Essentially, yes, Sora replied, but very fast rocks and very sophisticated dynamite. On Mars, Shipwright Wanho supervised the conversion of the largest cargo hauler construction facility in the solar system. The massive ships that had carried supplies and colonists between planets were being redesigned as weapons platforms. Their enormous cargo holds were perfect for storing missiles and kinetic projectiles, while their powerful engines gave them surprising maneuverability for such large vessels. The beauty of human engineering, Wanho explained to his assistants, is that we build things to be useful in multiple ways. A cargo ship can become a warship. A construction tool can become a weapon. A mining operation can become a fortress. The aliens built everything for one specific purpose, but we built everything to adapt. The transformation wasn't limited to hardware. Humanity's entire approach to space operations was changing. Nari, who had spent years mining asteroids in the outer solar system, found herself teaching military tacticians about zero-gravity combat and the strategic use of debris fields. "Space isn't empty," she explained during a briefing at Terran Defense Command. "It's full of resources that can be used as weapons if you know how. Every asteroid is a potential kinetic impactor. Every chunk of ice is raw material for rocket fuel. Every piece of debris is cover or ammunition." The Vex Empire had been expecting to face a species that fought like every other species they had conquered, with energy weapons in open space according to established military doctrines. They had no experience fighting an enemy that turned the environment itself into a weapon. Meanwhile, the New Dawn continued its journey toward Kepler 442b, now serving as humanity's first deep space military outpost. Captain Minho had transformed the colony ship into a mobile fortress, using the manufacturing facilities intended for building a new city to produce weapons and defensive systems instead. "How are the colonists handling the change?" Hana asked as they watched teams of settlers working to convert hydroponics bays into ammunition storage areas. "Better than I expected," Minho replied. "They came out here to build a new world, and now they're fighting to make sure that world will be free. It's not what they planned, but it's still worth doing." The colonists had adapted to their new role with typical human determination. Families who had expected to be farmers were learning to operate weapon systems. Children who had never seen a natural sky were being taught to recognize alien ship configurations. The entire population of the ship had become part of humanity's war effort. Una maintained constant communication with Earth, coordinating the flow of intelligence and tactical information between the deep space ship and the main human fleet. The quantum entanglement communicators that had been luxury items for long-range exploration had become vital military assets. "New transmission from Admiral Jiho," she announced. "The Third Conquest Armada is on the move. 200 ships heading toward our position." The news reached Earth at the same time, triggering the final phase of humanity's military transformation. Every available ship, from massive cargo haulers to small mining vessels, was pressed into service. The Sol system's defenses were unlike anything that had ever been built before. Not a traditional military fleet, but an entire industrial civilization converted into a weapon. Taiho, now serving as the New Dawn's military commander, studied the tactical situation with growing concern. 200 ships is 10 times what we faced before. Even with all our improvements, we can't fight that many enemies alone. "We won't be alone," Minho assured him. "Earth is sending reinforcements, and we have advantages that the aliens still don't understand." The reinforcements were unlike any fleet that had ever been assembled. Admiral Jiho's task force included converted cargo ships carrying thousands of kinetic projectiles, mining vessels equipped with industrial-grade cutting beams, and construction platforms that could build fortifications in real time during battle. Leading the fleet was humanity's first purpose-built warship, the Terran Defense Force flagship Resilience. Built in the orbital shipyards above Earth in record time, it incorporated both human engineering principles and adapted alien technology recovered from the previous battle. "She's not the biggest ship in the fleet," Jiho explained to his staff, "but she represents something the aliens have never seen before. Human military engineering designed from the ground up for war. The Resilience and her escort ships represented a new kind of warfare. Instead of the energy-based systems that dominated Vex military technology, human warships relied on kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, and tactical systems designed to take advantage of humanity's superior adaptability and creativity. But the real surprise awaiting the Vex was the nature of human space defense. Rather than concentrating their forces in a traditional fleet formation, the humans had distributed their defenses throughout the solar system. Every asteroid mining station had been converted into a fortress. Every orbital facility had been equipped with weapons. Even the space elevators connecting Earth to its orbital infrastructure had been turned into massive defensive installations. Commander Thexval arrived at the edge of the Sol system expecting to find a small defensive fleet, protecting a handful of primitive colonies. Instead, his sensors detected thousands of defensive installations, hundreds of armed vessels and weapon systems that his tactical computers couldn't classify. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system." his intelligence, officer reported. But they don't match any known weapon types. Because they're not weapons, Thexval realized with growing alarm. They're industrial equipment that's been converted into weapons. These humans have turned their entire civilization into a fortress. The Third Conquest Armada had been designed to overwhelm the defenses of conventional civilizations. But humanity was proving to be anything but conventional. They had taken everything the aliens knew about warfare and thrown it out the window, replacing it with tactics and technologies that the Vex had never encountered before. All ships, maintain formation, and proceed with the attack, Thexval ordered, though he was beginning to suspect that his two. The Battle of Sol began at 1427 Universal Standard Time, when the lead elements of the Third Conquest Armada crossed the orbit of Neptune and entered the kill zone of humanity's outermost defenses. What happened in the next 6 hours would be studied by military historians for centuries to come, assuming there were any military historians left to study it. Commander Thexval had arranged his fleet in the traditional Vex battle formation, a spearhead of heavy cruisers followed by supporting destroyers and frigates. It was a formation that had broken the defenses of 1,000 worlds, refined through centuries of successful conquest. It should have swept aside any resistance that a primitive species could offer. Instead, it ran headlong into the most unconventional defense strategy in galactic history. The first indication that something was wrong came when Thexval's sensors detected the activation of what appeared to be mining equipment scattered throughout the outer solar system. Asteroid processing stations that had been dormant suddenly came online, their massive industrial arrays swiveling to track the approaching alien fleet. "Sir, we're being painted by targeting systems," his tactical officer reported with obvious confusion. "But they don't match any known military configurations." Because they're not military systems, Thexval realized. They're mining equipment. These humans are planning to fight us with industrial tools. The first salvo came from Luna's mass. Drivers? Electromagnetic launchers originally designed to send processed materials from the moon to Earth's orbital factories. Now they were sending solid metal projectiles at significant fractions of light speed directly into the path of the advancing Vex fleet. "Evasive maneuvers," Thexval ordered, but his ships were designed for energy-based combat where beam weapons traveled at light speed and evasion was nearly impossible. They were not built to dodge physical projectiles that could be tracked and avoided with careful maneuvering. The VCS Dominator, one of his heavy cruisers, took 3 kinetic impacts in rapid succession. Its shields, designed to deflect energy, weapons might as well have been tissue paper against solid metal traveling at relativistic speeds. The impacts tore through the ship's hull like bullets through cardboard, venting atmosphere and crew into the vacuum of space. "The Dominator is down," came the panicked report. "Reactor breach. They're abandoning ship." Admiral Jiho watched the battle unfold from his command center deep beneath the Swiss Alps, surrounded by holographic displays showing the positions of every human asset in the solar system. Unlike the aliens, who were fighting according to established military doctrine, Jiho was improvising tactics in real time based on humanity's unique technological capabilities. "Activate the asteroid belt defenses," he ordered. Throughout the belt between Mars and Jupiter, mining stations that had been processing asteroids for rare metals suddenly revealed their true purpose. Each facility had been converted into a weapons platform, equipped with the same tools that had been cracking asteroids for decades. But now those tools were aimed at alien warships. The mining charges that shattered rocky asteroids proved equally effective against alien armor. Industrial cutting lasers that could slice through solid metal found no difficulty penetrating Vex hull plating. Even the simple explosive devices used for controlled demolition became devastating weapons when deployed in large numbers against ships not designed to withstand them. "This is impossible," Thexval muttered as he watched another of his ships succumb to what his sensors insisted were civilian mining tools. "How are they hurting us with equipment designed to process rocks?" The answer lay in a fundamental misunderstanding of human technology. The Vex had built their empire by conquering species that separated their civilian and military technologies. Mining equipment was for mining, weapons were for fighting, and never the two should meet. But humans had always built their tools to be adaptable, useful for multiple purposes depending on the situation. A mining laser powerful enough to cut through asteroid cores was also powerful enough to cut through spaceship hulls. An explosive charge capable of shattering rock was also capable of shattering armor plating. The humans weren't fighting with improvised weapons. They were fighting with tools that had always been weapons, just waiting for the right situation to reveal their true potential. The situation became even more chaotic when Wanho's converted cargo haulers entered the battle. The massive ships had been stripped of their cargo handling equipment and loaded instead with thousands of kinetic projectiles. Everything from simple metal rods to sophisticated guided missiles built in the orbital factories around Earth. "Missile launch detected," the Vex tactical officer shouted. "Correction, massive missile launch detected. Sir, they're firing everything at once." The cargo haulers opened their holds and released swarms of projectiles like deadly clouds of metallic locusts. Each ship carried enough ordnance to level a city, and there were dozens of them scattered throughout the solar system. The Vex Point defense systems, designed to intercept energy weapons and sophisticated guided missiles, were overwhelmed by the sheer quantity of incoming projectiles. But the real masterstroke came when Daeun's modified construction mechs entered the battle. The aliens had never encountered anything like them. Humanoid machines designed to build orbital habitats and space installations, now converted into zero-gravity warriors. The mechs moved through space with an agility that no spacecraft could match, using their construction tools as weapons and their intimate knowledge of human engineering to target critical systems on the alien ships. They could literally tear enemy vessels apart with their bare hands, using industrial cutters and welders to disable engines, weapons, and life support systems. "They're boarding us," came the terrified report from the VCS Conqueror. "But they're not using boarding pods. They're some kind of mechanical beings that are tearing through our hull." Nari led a squadron of modified mining vessels in an attack that violated every principle of space combat. Instead of engaging the enemy ships directly, her vessels used their mining equipment to gather asteroids and debris, then accelerated the material to high velocity and launched it at the alien fleet like a shotgun blast of cosmic proportions. "Remember," she broadcast to her pilots, "we're not trying to win a fair fight, we're trying to survive. Use every dirty trick you can think of." The mining ships deployed clouds of metallic chaff that interfered with alien sensors, used their drilling equipment to plant explosive charges on enemy hulls, and even employed their ore processing systems to create improvised chemical weapons. They fought like pirates and scavengers, using every resource available to maximum advantage. As the battle raged, Dr. Sora's analysis of captured Vex technology paid dividends. The aliens' reliance on centralized computer systems made them vulnerable to electronic warfare, and Yuna had developed a computer virus specifically designed to exploit this weakness. "Uploading the virus now," Yuna announced from her position aboard the New Dawn. The quantum entanglement communicators allowed her to transmit the malicious code directly to the alien ships, bypassing their external defenses entirely. The virus was elegant in its simplicity. Instead of trying to destroy the alien computer systems, it simply convinced them that friendly ships were actually enemies. Within minutes, Vex vessels throughout the fleet were turning their weapons on each other, their own tactical computers marking their allies as hostile targets. "Sir, the Devastator is firing on our ships," came the confused report. "They claim their computers show us as enemy vessels." Thexval watched in horror as his perfectly coordinated fleet dissolved into chaos. Ships that had fought together for decades were suddenly attacking each other based on false computer data. The humans had turned the Vex Empire's greatest strength, their sophisticated technology, against them. The turning point came when Admiral Jiho unleashed humanity's secret weapon, the Earth Defense Grid. Hidden throughout the solar system were thousands of small satellites, each equipped with a simple but effective weapon system. They had been disguised as communication relays and navigation beacons, completely invisible to alien sensors. When activated simultaneously, they created a crossfire that no ship could escape. Each satellite carried only a single kinetic projectile, but there were so many of them that they could target every alien vessel multiple times. It was death by 1,000 cuts delivered by weapons so simple that the Vex computers couldn't even classify them as threats. All ships, Retreat to minimum safe distance, Thexaval finally ordered, his voice carrying the weight of defeat. We are withdrawing from the system. But Admiral Jiho had anticipated this move. Human ships were positioned along every likely escape route, ready to intercept fleeing alien vessels. The humans had learned from their first encounter. This time, they weren't going to let their enemies escape to plan another attack. The battle that was supposed to demonstrate Vex superiority instead became a demonstration of human ingenuity. Of the 200 ships in the Third Conquest Armada, fewer than 50 escaped the Sol system. The rest were destroyed, captured, or disabled by weapons that shouldn't have existed according to every military manual in the Vex Empire. Commander, Thexaval found himself a prisoner aboard the human flagship Resilience, along with hundreds of other Vex survivee. The emergency session of the Vex High Command lasted for 3 full cycles, the longest such meeting in the Empire's 500-year history. Emperor Vex Gran presided over a collection of military leaders who had never experienced defeat, trying to understand how their supposedly invincible Third Conquest Armada had been destroyed by a species that shouldn't have been able to build spacecraft at all. "Explain to me again," the Emperor demanded, his forearms gesturing with barely controlled fury, "how a primitive species defeated 200 of our finest ships using mining equipment and construction tools." Fleet Admiral Zexithis Supreme, commander of all Vex military forces, studied the battle reports with growing unease. "Your Majesty, the humans do not fight according to any established military doctrine. They have weaponized their entire civilization in ways that our tactical computers cannot predict or counter. Are you telling me that these primitive beings are somehow superior to the Vex Empire?" "No, Your Majesty. But they are different. Every species we have conquered fought with military vessels designed for warfare. The humans fight with everything they have: cargo ships, mining equipment, construction tools, even their communication satellites. They turn their weaknesses into strengths and use our expectations against us." Emperor Vexagran considered this information with growing anger. The Empire had built its power on the certainty of technological and military superiority. The idea that a primitive species could threaten that supremacy was unthinkable. "Deploy the Grand Fleet," he ordered finally. "All 10,000 ships. If these humans want to fight with their entire civilization, then we will destroy their entire civilization." Meanwhile, in the Sol system, humanity was undergoing the most rapid military transformation in galactic history. The victory against the Third Conquest Armada had bought them time, but everyone understood that the aliens would return with overwhelming force. President Kyung had dissolved the old national governments and established the Terran Defense Coalition, with Admiral Jiho as supreme commander of all human forces. Every resource, every factory, every person in the solar system was now part of the war effort. "We can't win a conventional war against 10,000 alien ships," Jiho announced during a meeting of the coalition's leadership. "But we don't have to fight a conventional war. We just have to fight a war that they can't win." Hana, now promoted to Chief of Military Engineering, had been working non-stop to reverse engineer captured Vex technology and integrate it with human systems. The hybrid vessels she produced were unlike anything either species had built before, ships that combined alien energy weapons with human kinetic systems, alien materials, science with human engineering ingenuity. "The key advantage we have," she explained to the Coalition Council, "is that we learn faster than they do. Every battle teaches us something new about their technology and tactics. They've been fighting the same way for centuries, but we're inventing new ways to fight every day." Wanho had expanded his shipbuilding operations to every orbital facility in the solar system. The massive cargo haulers that had served humanity so well in the Battle of Sol were being replaced by purpose-built warships designed from the ground up for asymmetric warfare. Each vessel incorporated lessons learned from the previous battle, optimized for human tactics and alien weaknesses. But the real revolution was happening at the individual level. Every human settlement, from the major colonies on Mars and Europa to the smallest mining outposts in the asteroid belt, had become a fortress equipped with improvised weapons and manned by citizens who understood that their survival depended on their ability to fight. Taiho, now commanding the Sol system's mobile defense forces, oversaw the training of civilian populations in zero-gravity combat and space warfare tactics. Farmers learned to operate missile systems, engineers learned to pilot combat mechs, and children learned to recognize alien ship types. "We're not just building an army," he explained to his officers. "We're building a nation of warriors. Every human who can hold a tool is now a potential soldier." The transformation wasn't limited to military preparations. Dr. Sora's expanded. Research teams were making breakthrough discoveries in alien psychology and technology almost daily. The captured Vex prisoners provided invaluable intelligence about the Empire's structure, capabilities, and weaknesses. "The Vex have one critical vulnerability," Sora reported to Admiral Jiho. "They've become complacent. For 5 centuries, they've conquered every species they've encountered using the same basic tactics. They've never had to adapt or innovate because they've never faced serious resistance. What does that mean for us? It means they're going to keep making the same mistakes until we teach them not to. And by the time they learn, we'll have moved on to new tactics they've never seen before." The humans weren't content to wait for the aliens to return. Captain Minho, now commanding a battle group of converted colony ships and purpose-built warships, led humanity's first offensive operations beyond the Sol system. They established forward bases in 3 nearby star systems, using their superior logistics and rapid construction capabilities to create fortified positions throughout local space. "We're not going to fight this war in our backyard," Minho announced to his fleet commanders. "We're going to take it to them before they're ready." The forward bases served multiple purposes. They provided early warning of approaching Vex fleets, offered staging areas for human operations, and demonstrated to the aliens that humanity was no longer a passive victim waiting to be conquered. Each base was designed using Nari's expertise with asteroid mining and space construction, creating defensive installations that could be built quickly and cheaply, but were nearly impossible to destroy. Yuna, now serving as Chief of Interstellar Communications, maintained contact between all human forces using the quantum entanglement networks that gave them a crucial advantage over Vex communications technology. The aliens relied on faster-than-light travel to carry messages between their fleets, but humans could coordinate their operations instantaneously across any distance. Intelligence reports indicate the Vex Grand Fleet is moving toward our forward positions, she announced during a coalition war council. 10,000 ships, including their most advanced dreadnoughts and battlecruisers. They're not taking any chances this time. Admiral Jiho studied the strategic display showing the positions of human and alien forces throughout local space. The numbers were overwhelming. 10,000 enemy ships against fewer than 2,000 human vessels. But numbers weren't everything, as they had already proven. "They're expecting us to fight the same battle we fought before," he observed. "But we're not the same species that barely survived their first attack. We've learned, we've adapted, and we've prepared." The Great Fleet Battle of Kepler 442b began when the Vex Grand Fleet dropped out of hyperspace to find the human colony that should have been easy prey. Instead, they found a heavily fortified system defended by the largest human fleet ever assembled, supported by orbital fortresses and mobile defensive platforms that had never existed 6 months earlier. Emperor Vexagran himself commanded the AudioBook Grand Fleet from his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Victory. He had come personally to oversee the destruction of the humans, determined to end the threat they posed to the Empire's reputation and authority. "Begin the bombardment," he ordered. "Reduce their installations to debris, then eliminate their ships. I want these humans to understand the price of defying the Empire." But the humans had learned from their previous encounters. Instead of meeting the alien fleet in direct battle, they employed a strategy that utilized every advantage they possessed. The battle became a 3-dimensional chess match fought across multiple star systems, with human forces appearing and disappearing like ghosts, while the massive Vex fleet struggled to bring its superior firepower to bear. Dayun's combat mechs had evolved into sophisticated weapons platforms capable of operating independently for weeks at a time. They infiltrated the Vex formation, planting explosives and sabotaging critical systems before disappearing into the asteroid fields and debris clouds that human engineers had seeded throughout the system. The aliens found themselves fighting Not just human ships, but the environment itself. Asteroids that should have been empty chunks of rock exploded when alien vessels approached. Debris fields that appeared natural suddenly revealed hidden weapons platforms. Even the space between planets had been turned into a trap designed to catch and destroy unwary enemies. "This is madness," Emperor Vexagran roared as he watched his supposedly invincible fleet take losses from weapons that his sensors couldn't even detect. How can they be everywhere at once? The answer lay in humanity's decentralized command structure and superior communications technology. While the Vex fleet operated as a single massive unit requiring constant coordination from the flagship, human forces were broken into small independent groups that could act on their own initiative while remaining in constant contact with the overall strategy. When a group of Vex destroyers moved to attack what appeared to be a vulnerable human supply convoy, they found themselves walking into a trap that had been coordinated between dozen different human units. The supply ships were actually missile platforms, the escort vessels were he.